Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Dave Sands. Welcome to the Food Origins Podcast. I'll be talking to people about their unique stories with food. And as a quick reminder, the restaurants and gear talked about on each episode can be found on my website, foodoriginspodcast.com. I appreciate your support, and thanks for listening. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Food Origins Podcast. Today, my guest is Sean Nguyen. He is the founder and owner of PapaWagyu. Sean is of Vietnamese descent and born and raised in San Jose, California. We discuss how we became friends through food and began working events together. We go over his family meals growing up, like Bun Bo Hue Pho noodle soups. After traveling to Japan, the dream was planted to somehow work in the hospitality industry with food. Sean continued to work for his family's furniture business and later took a job in the tech industry, always finding ways to help people. PapaWagyu was started by Sean during the pandemic to connect communities of people together through food. An e-commerce business purveying high-end Japanese, Australian, and American Wagyu, which is Japanese for beef. Taking the time to find the best farms with a passion for raising the best cattle. Sean breaks down the grading system to understand what you're eating. Sean recently visited the Bushu farm in Japan, which is part of the Hasegawa family. PapaWagyu is also partnered with Maruhide USA, which supplies fresh Santa Barbara uni sea urchin. Sean and I discuss our ideas of success and his favorite tools too. I really appreciate him for coming on, his friendship, and supporting my journey as well, and we look forward to the future. Enjoy this episode. Thanks for listening. All right, man, we're rolling, dude.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, finally getting this done. Appreciate Sean coming on. Sean and I become really good friends over the last year. Sean is the founder of PapaWagyu. We'll get into all that soon enough. Appreciate everybody listening. And Sean, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us where you're from. Tell us all that good stuff, where you grew up and everything.
Yeah, so my name is Sean Nguyen, or you might say Wing if you're Vietnamese. Grew up in San Jose, California. Big Vietnamese population out here. Sorry, what was that other?
So, if you haven't introduced yourself before, where'd you grow up? Obviously we know your ethnic background is Vietnamese. Yeah. And where'd you grow up? Where were you born and raised?
Born and raised in San Jose. Pretty much lived here my whole life. And then I moved out to Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, after I graduated high school. It was about 2007. Did that for about 2 years. Dropped out. And then went back to San Jose, did community college, and then finished at Davis. And then after college, moved back to San Jose.
And, you don't have to tell us, but like if you want, just what happened? Why'd you leave and what made you drop and then kind of change things around?
Yeah.
Is you doing a career change or?
You're talking about when I dropped out of school?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Cal Poly, you essentially get the hardest classes first when you're in computer engineering. And they do that to weed out the people that don't want to be there. And I had really strict parents growing up, so didn't party at all in high school, didn't drink or anything, right? So then here I am, this young buck comes out, and I'm like, oh, this is what beer tastes like, right? So I kind of went crazy, partied too much, and then just, ended up dropping out. And then went to community college, and I was like, man, I gotta get my life together, man.
Yeah.
So I worked pretty hard, did the community college route, and then just finished at Davis and got pretty good grades.
Awesome. And we'll get into where you ended up after that, but let's go back to, obviously this podcast is food based, and it's really how we got connected. A brief synopsis how we got connected was, through Chef 2. So shout out to Chef 2. We were supposed to be at an event together, me and Sean. Actually, Sean was supposed to be at this event, and Chef 2 asked me to help volunteer for the Seisuke knife event with Yu Kurosaki at the Japantown Community Center. And so I attended that event, and shout out to everyone that was there, and they've all become our friends since that event. And, it's everyone from Mac Barbecue, Trifecta Cooks, Seisuke Knife. Shout out to Tim Quixote he was on the podcast prior. If you guys haven't listened to him, he ran that event. And then we had Spice Tribe. We had Den Sake was there. And then, of course, Japan's youngest master bladesmith, Yu Kurosaki. And then I, was looking after the event. I kind of, we took some group photos, and I was like, oh, PapaWagyu was there too. He must be in there. And so I tagged everyone in the post. And then Sean hit me up and was like, hey, I was supposed to be at that event. That's not me anywhere in that photo. And I was like, oh, okay. And then we just started talking. I think we jumped on the phone and started talking, and we have very like-minded things going on, especially with transition careers and everything else. And we've been friends ever since. But we also have like some events that we did together. And I'll bring everybody up to speed on this. If his wife's listening too, she knows very well that the first time I worked with Sean, he had a little too much to drink that day. But it was an awesome event. Shout out to Hammond Entertainment. We were at Spanish Hills Golf Course in LA. It's for the Boys and Girls Club. And they put on a charity event for that, along with Cedric the Entertainer. And we were in the booth with, is it Six? What's the name of the?
Yeah, shout out to us.
Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about that event?
So 6 Cents Dining was our caterer, right? So in that event, we had me that brought out the Wagyu. We had Uni from Maruhita, which we'll kind of dive into later.
Yep.
Shout out to Christine out there. And then, so 6 Cents is by my friend Jesus and Chef On, very talented. We just basically made food under a tent. So our tent also had a Nod, which had the cognac and the vodka there. But it's just a really great event, and the whole point is just to raise money for different charities. Most of these charities are like for underprivileged youth. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I thought that event was funny because it was my first time working with you, and sometimes I get a little too excited, and I have a little bit too much to drink. And
yeah,
what time did we start that day?
Yeah, we started early. Yeah. I mean, it was all in one day, so we flew in early morning. I mean, I think we were up at probably 4 or 5 a.m. Flew in that morning, got in that morning, went straight to the golf course, got everything kind of set up, and then the celebs and everyone else was coming through almost right away, Yeah. And then the alcohol was flowing a little bit. But it's just funny because despite that, I could have easily fucked with you the entire rest of the night, flight home and everything. But I felt bad because, we had a good time, and you were just like, you couldn't enjoy the Italian dinner we had, which was super good. That was delicious, and hanging out with everybody. But, we connected over that event, and we've been friends ever since. And, so shout out to everyone at the event at Seisuke to put us together.
Yeah. Then just going back to that event. So that event down in SoCal was thrown by Bill Hammond, and he has Hammond Entertainment, and his kind of charity arm just throws these different golf events. So that one was for Cedric the Entertainer. So that was dope. And I appreciate you coming out and helping me, man.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Chuck Liddell was out there.
Oh, yeah.
Joe Torre.
Yeah, Joe Torre.
Some of the a lot of football players coming through there. And yeah, put on a great event.
I love how food connects everyone. Yeah. Chuck Liddell was actually kind of my idol back in Cal Poly because he's from SLO, so his gym was like the Pit.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of a trip to see him. I totally forgot about him.
Yeah.
And then I think that's why we kind of connect too, because you have a jiu-jitsu background, and yeah.
And as huge MMA fans, so to see him just come up and he's like, "What do you guys got?" And I was like, "Oh boy, here we go." He just tore through all the Wagyu bites.
I was like, I don't think I have enough beef for this guy.
Yeah, but I mean, it was delicious. Chef On put together a sukiyaki sauce for the A5 Wagyu, and we had black truffle on top, right?
Yeah, so we had truffles. Shout out to Jose at Velarde Foods. So the sauce they made was a sukiyaki glaze reduction with fresh truffles. And then we had the Australian Wagyu picanha, and then he shaved a fresh truffle on the top. Ooh, so good.
So good. Excellent, man. And that's, that's a short like synopsis how we got connected and that one event. And then we've gone on to do a bunch of other events, but we'll get into about Sean a little more, tell us, it's kind of the first question I ask everybody is what'd you eat growing up? What was it like growing up in San Jose? And then, what'd you eat?
Yeah,
what was family meals like?
I think I was really spoiled growing up because my dad loves to cook. So my parents, they're entrepreneurs, so kind of worked crazy hours, 6-7 days a week. But the one thing I always remember is when they got home, my dad would always cook us a fresh meal, right? So it's going to be family style. A lot of times there's going to be like 3 to 5 dishes, right? So our nanny would like do the prep. So we did like a lot of braised meats, a lot of stir fries. My dad was actually a fisherman too, so he would like catch these fish. And as I was growing up, I was like, oh, it's just dinner, right? This is like what we ate. But now I look back, I'm like, oh shit, man. It took a lot of work, and I feel like people I talk to, right? If you have like a home cooked meal, like this is kind of a special, it's not every day, but maybe once a week or so. So, and so that's kind of what I ate at dinner. During the daytime, I would eat a lot of leftovers. So they would just basically meal prep, right? So there's a lot of Asian food. And then, like on the weekends, we would just go to our family's houses for babysitting. So those were a little bit different. We just kind of eat whatever they had. A lot of times they didn't have much. Ate a lot of Spam, fried rice, Vienna sausage, right? Okay, I love Vienna sausage. Yeah. Then my family, so when my dad and mom would have a day off, we would go to like American restaurants. So we'll have like Red Lobster, or like Chili's, or Tony Romo's for ribs. That's kind of like what I remember.
Just kind of the American chains.
Yeah.
What's you said food wise with what kind of dishes did you guys eat?
So have you had a tikka? It's like braised pork. So every Asian cuisine has like their variation of it. It's like braised pork with like egg, right? So ours was like tikka. So I ate a lot of that growing up. It's like a huge pot, and I would just like, get rice. You get a whole huge bowl of rice and just put that over. So I was kind of meat and potatoes kind of guy.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Rice. Yeah.
Does it have like, it's braised pork? Is there like some herbs and stuff in there? And
yeah, I guess it depends on how you make it. I've actually never made it, but essentially you just get, you kind of boil the impurities out of the pork, and then you kind of sear it in a pan, and then put a fish sauce, garlic, coconut water, kind of depends on what it is. But it's like very rich and meaty.
Yeah.
So I think eating that a lot when I was younger kind of developed like my palate nowadays. That's what I kind of like to eat.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of rich and heavy foods. Mm-hmm. There's also another dish that my dad used to like to make because I love Spam, right? So I love Spam almost as much as Wagyu.
Yeah. He's half Hawaiian.
Yeah. So my dad would make this dish where he'd fry the Spam, and then he would cut up into slices, and he would basically take tomatoes, saute them down with garlic, shallots, water, right? Because Spam is very salty. So that was really good because it would kind of balance out the dish, and then we'd eat that with rice. We ate a lot of vegetable stir fries too. There's like ramung, which is what is ramung in English? Shoot, I have to get back to you on that.
Yeah,
but yeah, just a lot of different stir fries. And then also 2 dishes that I really liked growing up was Bun Bo Hue. I don't know if you've had that. So everyone knows pho, right?
Yeah.
It's like beef noodle soup. You have the clear noodles, but
not everybody knows.
Yeah. Okay. So pho, it sounds
try to get some people that you have never even heard of what you're talking about.
Yeah. So pho is essentially it's just beef noodle soup, right? So you have like it's very labor intensive. You got to cook it down for a day. It's a beef bone broth, and then the pho noodles are like rice noodles, right? And then you have like all your different vegetables and garnishes and whatnot, right? So that's if you think of Vietnamese food, typically you think of like pho. If you think about Bun Bo Hue, it's spicy beef noodle soup. And why Bun Bo Hue is special is because I think pho, you can actually mask the flavor, right? If you get it at a restaurant, bones are really expensive. So a lot of times, like they'll mask it, with different things. You can also add sriracha and lime, which I like to put in pho, and it makes it pretty good. But spicy beef noodle soup, you can't mask that. So if your broth doesn't have a lot of bones, it tastes really bland. So that's kind of my dad's specialty, right?
Okay.
And food to me is all about bringing people together, right? So you would make that once, maybe a month or two. I just remember a lot of people coming over, and then kind of got famous for it, and everyone's trying to get him to start a restaurant. And then now that I'm a dad, I'm like, dang, I kind of want to learn this recipe so I could pass it down to my son, right? Because I don't want him to just think, Vietnamese food is like when we go out and when we just eat whatever, is out there. I want to be able to pass down these like recipes, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And is that, I kind of, when I talk to everyone that's, into food, especially on this podcast, is there an initial impact, like probably from childhood, that was like, man, I think you may not necessarily knew you were going to have a career in food or, have business or, work in a restaurant, but was there something where you're like, wow, this is like really cool? Besides, obviously the home cooked meals are probably the best you could ask for. Maybe that dish is your impact with food growing up, do you think? Or is there some other instances that happen?
Yeah, I would say that is probably a catalyst. Just seeing that, we all get so busy in life, and then just having people come over, right? So, if I had to think of a Vietnamese dish that really like impacted me, it's probably Bun Bo Hue. But I would say I actually watched a lot of Food Network when I was younger. And I would actually just like watch it at night and fall asleep to it. Like Diners, Drive-Ins. What was that show called?
Yeah.
Triple D. Going to Flavortown.
Guy Fieri,
yeah. I think I watched a lot of food shows. I think one of the shows that really got to me was Anthony Bourdain. I loved how he was able to connect with people, right? And food is it's like a universal love language, right? It doesn't matter where you're from, but if you can share a meal with somebody, you actually learn that, dang, you actually have a lot in common with people. And then, I think that I didn't really know it was going to be in food. And we'll get down to my career later on, but I've always loved different things that connect people. I used to be a DJ, so it's like music. I love music, right? So there's like two things. Food and music, I think, are therapeutic. They bring people together.
Cooking as well.
Cooking, yes.
Putting it all together, I think the process as well. Like, we've done some events together, and that entire process is great, right? Like from getting everything ready, figuring out who's going to be there, what kind of event is it going to be, what are we going to have there, who's coming, and then finally like getting there and then putting it all together, and then seeing the joy. I think we both have that mindset of seeing the joy that they get out of something that you've prepared or brought to them. And then, and everyone knows this that watches this podcast. If I recommend a restaurant to you, I hopefully am, batting 1,000 and you have a great experience. If you don't, I'm kind of ticked off if you don't, right? Like I want everyone to know that like, hey, I went there, or I don't know it, or I did the research to help you have a great experience, right? Yeah. Like, I think we're both on that same kind of wavelength. Career-wise, so like, before, were you DJing in high school and stuff like that? Where's the DJ part come in to play before? I know Sean was in the tech industry, so kind of just build us up to, college, and then kind of bring us up to speed and where we are today.
Yeah, so I started DJing in college for fun. My friends kind of just went to different universities across California. So I was like, and it would be dope to be able to just go around and travel and go meet up with my friends and then just have a good time. So started, essentially became a mobile DJ. And I just kind of did that through college. Started when I was probably third year in college. And then after I graduated in 2012, I kind of just sold all the gear off. So after I graduated, I was looking for a job, and one of my dream companies to work for was Google, right? So my dad goes to me, he's like, "Hey, while you're searching for jobs, why don't you just come work for me, right? And just then when you get a job, you can go do something else."
Yeah.
But I think he knew exactly what he was doing. So I'll backtrack a little bit too. Have you noticed that there's a lot of Vietnamese furniture stores in the Bay Area?
I know there's a ton of furniture stores, but you probably know that I guess some of them are Vietnamese owned. Yeah, I'm saying. As you
go like down to the South Bay, you kind of notice that a lot of the small mom and pop shops are Vietnamese. Yeah, but there's like two families that essentially started it. It was my grandparents, and then there's like another family. So when I graduated, I was like, oh, it'd be kind of cool, be a third generation business owner. So yeah, just basically, I started working there. Started on delivery and did sales. I kind of did everything, right? Yeah. And then my dad was like, I want to retire. So I was like, okay. So I'll do this, right? And then I was like, this is kind of fun. I like entrepreneurship, right? Kind of in school, you're kind of told what to do, what to learn, right? And there's not a lot of creativity, in my opinion. But in entrepreneurship, like you can steer the boat anywhere you want to go. So anyways, I did that for about 8 years. It was a pretty successful store. From the outside, a lot of people wanted to be in my position if you were in the furniture industry. But honestly, I hated my job. I love taking care of my family, and I was like, I'm going to keep grinding, right? I used to work 6-7 days a week, right? All holidays and stuff. And I did it really just to support my family. Because I'm like, dude, if I walk away from this, then, my parents, they might lose everything. So I kind of just worked. Yeah. And then I remember in 2018, I went to Japan and I proposed to my wife. And at that time I was walking around Japan. I was like, this place is fucking amazing. And I just remember I was like, I would love to be in the food industry, right? Or do something just to come back here. At the time I was like, I was stuck with the store, and I was like, maybe in another lifetime, right? It's kind of sad. Yeah, so I remember, and I was like, I wanted to eat Wagyu, but it's kind of expensive, right? Yeah.
Kind of being nice. It's expensive for sure.
So we visited Kobe, and I remember looking, I think it was about $150. But if you've never been to Japan, all the food is good there. There's just so much competition, dedication, and essentially, I'd say like if you own a restaurant, you have to be pretty good. Otherwise, I think you just be out. So I was like, man, most of my meals are like $15, and I like some of the best food I've ever had. I don't think I can spend the $150, right?
Yeah,
I think that kind of left an imprint on my head. And when I started PapaWagyu, it's like, I want everyone to try this. And that's always been kind of a motivator, right? It's just being able to curate an experience, and then if they have it for the first time, just seeing the happiness out of that.
Yeah, that kind of your trip to Japan back then planted that seed for you right there.
Yeah, yeah, it did. And then when I turned 30, I was like thinking about exiting the furniture store for a long time. And then I was like, you know what? I might as well just do it. So then I pretty much let them know that, hey, I'm going to be taking off. And during that time, I was like, I don't really know what I want to do. I like helping people. So what can I do to help people? And my wife is a recruiter at Facebook. She was like, oh, why don't you become a recruiter? I was like, sounds great. Yeah, I could help people find their next mission. So kind of in 2019, I started working at Facebook as a recruiter. So I used to recruit Android, full stack, and backend engineers. So Facebook at the time basically owns like Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, and all these other different products. So those are pretty fun. So I did that for a little over a year. And then that's when the pandemic happened. And then I remember sitting at the desk, and my coworker was like, "Hey, I think the world's gonna shut down." And I started laughing. I was like, "You're crazy. There's no way, right?" And like 2 weeks later, we're just sitting at home. I'm like, "Shit,
Yeah.
what do I do?" I love talking to people, right? And I love just being out there. And I was like, "Man, I'm stuck at home. I'm still working at Facebook at the time. So what do I do?" So I was like, "Well, I like Wagyu. I like beef." So I just started this Instagram page just to connect with people. And I was just basically had my friends over, and we would just like record our cookout sessions, right? That's kind of how like PapaWagyu started.
And how'd you get the name?
You want to know the full story?
Tell us the story.
I'm gonna drop a bomb here.
Yeah.
So my wife actually gave me that name. So I remember it's about my birthday, right? We're sitting, we're just like trying to brainstorm like our side hustles, right? And she was like, "Oh, well, why don't you do like Papa and Wagyu? Because you like beef, right? You like Wagyu, Papa because you're gonna be a dad." I was like, "Okay." So I remember we were sitting in the backyard, and then it was my birthday, and she brought me a cake, and then yeah, just I remember at the time I was like so excited, right? I mean, the pandemic was shitty, right? But it's really
it was
beautiful.
supposed to be 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and it turned into 2
Yeah.
months, and now practically 2 years, and
Yeah.
then some. Yeah.
It was really good in some aspects too, but yeah. So my wife gave me the name PapaWagyu. That kind of just stuck with me, and yeah, we basically a few months go by, and then you know, I'm like stoked to be a dad, right? And then we just you know, fast forward, like we had a miscarriage, right? And yeah, that kind of broke me because we have the pandemic, I have all these bad things happening, and then yeah, just you know, I had all these plans and of what I was going to do as a father, right?
Sure.
And then yeah, that just happened, and yeah, it broke me in half, man.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to go to.
Yeah, it's tough. But anyways, like I stuck with the name because I was like, man, after you know some time passed, I was like, I want to continue. And what is my mission and my purpose here? And it's to spread happiness. I was like, the spirit of my baby can continue, and it'll continue and manifest to make other people happy through food. So yeah, that's where the name came from. And,
Yeah, and you know, if people don't know, you've got Oliver now.
yeah, so, we have.
There's some happiness to come out of that.
Yeah, yeah. My son Oliver is gonna be 2 in August. He's such an amazing kid. But yeah, now I look back at it, like, man, it's pretty crazy how all those things happened. And at the same time, it's actually really good because from COVID, I think a lot of us were gifted the ability to start over, right? Because there's a lot of people I talk to, right? And just across different industries, you'll be successful, right? Whether it's like you have a high level position in your job, you might be very well off, but there's a lot of people that just hate what they do.
Yeah.
So yeah,
we've been talking about that.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, because they've got into a good career,
yeah,
but it isn't exact like, you know, like I don't shoot down college at all. You get what you get from it, but like there's a lot of people that went to college for a specific degree. They got that degree, and you ask them what job they do. It has nothing to do with that degree. And and then there's plenty that, you know, did it and are doing exactly like I've got a couple buddies that he did it exactly. He knew what he wanted in high school. He's like, I want to be a mechanical engineer.
yeah,
Went to high school, went to college for mechanical engineering. He is a mechanical engineer.
Yeah.
He's been one for 20 years, but he's a select few, you know? And so like for you to kind of like just, and we're both in that same way. Like that's why we get along really well. It's like we saw during the pandemic, you got to kind of sit back a little bit and go, okay, what else is out there for me when everything else isn't looking so good?
yeah.
You know, and so that's how you started PapaWagyu. And why don't you tell us what PapaWagyu is and what you do and what you provide? And and we'll get into all the good stuff.
On a high level, I just bring people together. But no, PapaWagyu, it's a e-commerce business. So you can buy Wagyu and we'll ship that nationwide. But also do like Wagyu wholesale, so supply restaurant chefs, and also do in-person catering events. Yeah, so there's a lot of different moving parts and a lot of new collaborations. But in essence, when I had my son for first, I would say year, I was kind of working part-time and then taking care of him. Fast forward to 2 years now, he's in school. So I've been able to kind of just kick it up a notch. I was also building out another, I don't know if I ever told you this, I was building out another company called Wagyu Society with my two friends.
Okay.
Yeah. So at one point I was working at Facebook. I had PapaWagyu and I was building out a startup.
Yeah, and people don't understand is that you've built like the entire thing. It's not like you paid someone to do it or whatever. You've done all the behind the scenes work too. You've made connections with everyone.
Yeah.
You've networked and then created the entire process. So like you're building even the website that that you look at. So like people think like, oh, it's Sean just like, went on, I'm not going to say any of the website makers, but like you just didn't throw up a quick site and it was like, cool, I'm done. You did the entire builds from the ground up, which is awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
And it's still, obviously in process still, but tell us what you got. And, I know I've been fortunate to go through life without tasting A5 Wagyu for years and years and years. And these last 2 years, like I guess year and a half has like I've tasted quite a bit and, you've got quite a source of meat. So tell us what you have. And besides doing private events and special events and stuff like that, which are always fun, shout out to everyone at the Heritage Fire Tour, Coach on 555. They were awesome. That was another event we worked together in with a whole team, with Mac Barbecue and really good time out there and, bringing in other good stuff right there. Yeah.
If I had to think about what I do of how I source Wagyu, I'll think of like, if you go to Japan, like some of the best restaurants, right? If it's omakase style, it's like, seats 12 to 15, right? And I think what that translates to me is quality can't be scaled. So I work with some of the biggest like importers and Wagyu brands out there. And I'm lucky because I have good relationships with them. So I actually am able to source, in my opinion, what is like the best. Have you ever watched Jiro, Dreams of Sushi?
Yes.
Yeah, you see how he sources stuff, right? It's kind of similar to that. Yeah. So I source the best Wagyu from Japan, Australia, America. And kind of what that selection process looks like is I'll do a lot of research about them ahead of time. And then I'll hop on interviews with the farmers, right? And what I'm really looking for there is passion and just like kind of the outliers. Because all Wagyu essentially is like pretty good.
Yeah.
But I want something that is extraordinary. And I also want to know who I'm working with, a lot of the farms I work with, I'll give you an example of like Makoto, right? He does 1 to 3 cattle a month for the whole world, right? So I talk to him a lot on Instagram, and he's a family man. And I love that. I love supporting him because I can tell you like a lot about his product, but I also know that like by eating this, enjoying it, we're also helping his family. So yeah, if you go to PapaWagyu.com, you can essentially order whatever is, in my opinion, the best curation. On the wholesale side, it's a little bit different because there's a lot more products, but PapaWagyu.com is basically a very, very niche selection of, my opinion, some of the best farms and programs in the world.
Yeah, and I took note of what you have currently. Sean's got from Japan. He's got Bushu, Makoto, Omi beef, Drunken Wagyu, and Miyazaki, right?
Yeah,
and those are all A5 full blood, 100% Wagyu.
Yeah,
and like Guy tells us, black Tajima line cows.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So Wagyu translates to Japanese cow.
Yeah.
Most of the Wagyu you find in the United States and Australia are actually hybrids. Specifically, it's a F1 hybrid between Japanese Wagyu and Angus.
Yeah.
Which crossing animals is a very hard science, and there's a lot of programs that don't marble out really well. So that's kind of like a little rabbit hole we can go down.
Yeah, and then you can kind of explain it a little bit because you also carry Australian Wagyu and American Wagyu. So you carry Australian Silver and Gold Reserve as a F4 hybrid, right?
Yeah.
So tell us just a little. You can kind of give us a description of that, because some people are like, oh, I thought Wagyu's only from Japan. So where are these other ones coming from?
So we might want to backtrack a little bit of in I think it was 1984, Japan basically made it illegal to export live Wagyu and DNA. So in Wagyu, to be considered Wagyu, it has to be 100% full blood, meaning there's no crossbreeding. Similar to like in the U.S., we have you have dogs, right? They have you have the papers that tells you that this is like the genetic line.
Yeah, purebred.
Purebred. So purebred in the Wagyu term, some people think purebred is actually full blood. It's not. Purebred means like the genetics has to be at least 93.75% Wagyu or higher. F4 is very unique because most of the hybrids are 50-50, right? It's Angus and Wagyu. F4 means it's 93.75%. So all that really means is if you had a A5 Wagyu, and a lot of people will say, oh, it's too rich. Right? You just eat a little bit. It's like delicacy, right?
Right.
Similar to like Toro, right? You just eat a little bit with sushi rice, and it's really good. F4 is really unique because it has really extraordinary marbling, but it's also has a little bit of steak texture to it.
And
it's also
a little more bite to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think Australia has much better Wagyu than the US. Because a lot of times, like I'll read about these programs, and when I pull out the Australian stuff and I'm reading about the science, it's like written by scientists, right? And it's kind of it's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
And in Australia, when they grade the meat, it's actually like a third party that comes in there and grades the meat, right? So BMS stands for beef marbling score standard, right? And then just all it does is it measures how much fat to meat there is. The higher the number, the fattier it is. When you're like thinking about like what type of Wagyu you like, typically you want to look at what's the BMS I'm eating, and then like what's a cut, and then from there, it makes it a lot easier to order things.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then in the United States, when the grading is actually done in-house by each brand. So it's up to them to say what it is. And there's no standard way, right? So
that makes sense.
BMS 4.5 could be whatever they say it, right? So that's what, there's like a lot of confusion in the industry.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's like deceit as well. But all I want people to know is like, I want you to be able to understand what you're eating and then why you like it.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense for someone to buy Japanese A5 Wagyu and they don't like it, right? And I think the best way to do this is just you just try a bunch of things and just see what you like because it tastes.
Yeah, and then you're giving them a transparent description of what you're getting too.
Yeah,
it doesn't just say and I'll text Sean or I'll send him a message and I'll be at the grocery store somewhere, Japanese grocery store or some other places, and be like, hey, all it says is Wagyu. It says from Japan, but it has no description. Having the Wagyu I've got from you and being able to flip over the package and say, okay, this is the farm it came from. This is the cut. This is what you're getting. And, just give you glanced over, but give a quick synopsis of the rating from Japanese Wagyu and Australian Wagyu, because it's a little bit different. Mm-hmm. I know the BMS is the marbling. Mm-hmm. So obviously the better the marble, of course, the more fatty, but just give us a quick breakdown on the rating from Japanese Wagyu, which we know A5 being the highest, and then the F rating in Australia.
Yeah. So in Japan, we know that everything is full blood, right? So A5 is a Japanese grading term, and it's reserved for essentially the highest quality. But within the actual A5, there's BMS 8 to 12. So BMS 8 is like the lowest for A5, and then BMS 12 is the highest. BMS 12 is like super, super fatty. So let's say like on a pallet of Wagyu, right? You have all these boxes. You might get one box that's BMS 12. So it's like very special. That's actually what I specialize in getting. And you can only get that if you have a really good relationship with people.
Yeah, and that's that's what you're good at too.
Yeah. So the F number, it just tells you like the genetic component of this Wagyu. So if you have full blood, which is 100%, then you have F4, goes down to F3, F2, and F1. F1 and being 50-50, right?
Okay. And meaning those are all hybrids too, right?
Yeah, any F is like the hybrid, right?
Okay.
And then just remember that you're just looking for the beef marble score, right? And you can also tell, like, when you're looking at the Wagyu, like how much fat to meat there is. But something to also kind of think about too is the more Wagyu genetics you have, the more melt in your mouth texture it's going to be, right? Because it's more Wagyu characteristics. So Japanese Wagyu it's very interesting because the melting point is around room temperature, right? You can actually take your finger, if you do this for A5 next time, you just rub your finger across the meat, and then you'll melt the beef because there's a low melting point.
Yeah.
So if something has like BMS 8, for example, and you're comparing to like F1, which is a 50-50 split versus the full blood, it's going to be completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got it. And, I wanted you to talk about it, and we kind of saved it because we were like, oh, he's going to Japan.
Yeah.
And Sean has recently gotten, we're not talking about your old trip, but your recent trip to Japan, you got to see some of this stuff up close. What was that like? And, the impact on it, and kind of share about, the care that goes into raising these cows.
Yeah. So I think there's definitely a huge disconnect for me, right? Because you could do a lot of research, right? You could read all the papers you want. You could do all the research. You could talk to the farmers, right? But unless you like actually go see it in person, it's completely different, just going there was like eye opening, right? Because I think Japanese culture, which I admire, is whatever you do, you just take passion in it. With Wagyu, the cattle were actually like a lot older, and it's basically like taking care of a baby, you got to check on it a few hours, and it's pretty crazy to see the amount of care for each cattle, right? Because Wagyu only marble really well under very low stress conditions. So the farmers essentially do whatever they can to reduce those stress levels, right? And everyone has like their own little different techniques and whatnot. I was been able to go out there. We started our trip with going out to actually one of the farms. So Bushu is from the Hasegawa family. Nicest people ever. So we went to go visit their farm, got to see what they ate, got to feed some of the baby Wagyu. Mm-hmm. And it was really nice to be able, because I've talked to him on Instagram, but it was just being able to go there and they're just so humble, man. It's beautiful. And then after the tour, we went to their restaurant, and then they brought their whole family out and they cooked for us. And I think that was probably the most magical meal I've had, right? You're essentially breaking bread with your purveyor. And that's kind of like how I like to do a lot of things. Is it feels like just me hanging out with someone else's family, right? Because and so after that, we went couple different places in Japan. One is like a federal meat academy, and they basically taught us how to cut different parts down. Just basically seeing the whole operation down to like when the Wagyu get off the truck and then they go to slaughter, right? And then how they break those down and it gets ready for export. There's a lot of moving parts, and it just makes you appreciate all the work, love that came, that happened for that beef to get onto your plate. I'm glad I did that. So
yeah, and it gives you like that extra connection to the food. We talk about people that have misconnections with their food. They don't know how it's processed. They don't know the care it took.
Yeah.
Same with cooking in general, where a dish that you eat in 5 minutes is like, man, that took all day to make. You know, that brisket took 18 hours to sit and smoke, you know, and you're eating in like 2 seconds and you're like, oh, that was great. But I'm like, man, you know, we're all guilty of it. Sometimes we're just hungry, we eat fast, but cherishing that moment is awesome. And you know, Omi Beef was out here recently and I got to talk to him, and just listening to what the care that goes into it and understanding, like, they love these cows, you know, and a lot of, there's, I think, some misconception, but you know, like they say, like, you know, there's kind of, you know, there are stressed cows, right? They're just force fed and all that stuff. I'm like, no, they're like treated like kings. They live like kings, really, you know. And they do get to like move around and stuff, but they're just treated like royalty. It's just a little bit different than just kind of, I think what Omi Beef told me was that he's like, instead of letting them graze and like, I don't see them for sometimes a couple days, or, you know, just checking on them once a day. He goes, no, I check on them all the time. Yeah. That's the difference. Like every day, it's like, you know, if I told, you know, if I was raising Sean, I said, Sean, go out in the field. There's plenty of grass for you to eat. There's water. See you later. I'll see you in 10 hours, you know? No, he's like, no, I check on him hourly sometimes. And he's like, just way more attention for each one. And it's each one, not, you know, 50 cattle. They're really focused on every single one, and they have every detail mapped out.
Yeah. It's like made with love, you know? You only do that if you really, really love something.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely got to go to Japan.
So we got to figure out how we can go together.
Yeah. So we got to work on that. And then, you know, in America, you've got Washugu, right? Washugyu, I should say. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about them. And
that's an interesting program. A lot of American Wagyu programs, or even not Australian, right? They're kind of led by the people that actually live there. Washugu is interesting because they actually flew out one of the top Japanese farmers. So there's actually a Japanese guy running that program. And I think the easiest way that I think about it is like in jiu-jitsu, right? If you have a black belt that's teaching a class, right? You're going to learn a lot faster. So the programs that have like kind of Japanese people running it, and they bring over the techniques, those programs marble out really well. So that program I think does really well. There's another one too called Masami. I don't know if you've heard of him, but it's a Japanese guy. I love talking to those guys because they're living their dream out here. But yeah, in the Bushukyu, it's Japanese Wagyu crossed with Angus. But like I said, like when you cross Wagyu, it takes a lot for the beef to marble out really well, and it's also really hard to do that consistently. Yeah. So that's probably one of my favorite American programs right now.
Okay, nice. And then we're going to get into some of your partners that you've been kind of partnering up with and helping grow. One of them is Maruhide USA. They're out of Long Beach, and they provide uni.
Yeah. Maruhide. So Maruhide, they're essentially like one of the biggest Santa Barbara sea urchin processors based out of Long Beach. So they have a lot of different divers. The divers will pick up the sea urchin, and then their trucks, Maruhide's trucks will transport it down to Long Beach, and they'll just leave it there. So when you place an order on their website, they actually crack the sea urchin fresh for you, and they'll ship it out right away. They supply a lot of Michelin restaurants and some of the biggest distributors. So yeah, I've been helping Christine kind of rebuild her company, and then also I essentially work there too, right? Which is interesting because when we backtrack, right, I built MaruhideUSA.com, I built PapaWagyu.com, and just wearing a lot of different hats, I've actually found myself to be kind of useful to people. So yeah, I just moved my my warehouse down there, so they'll be basically shipping out all my orders, and then also doing wholesale as well. So I feel very fortunate to be able to partner with them. And then Christine is the CEO now, and she's like one of the nicest people out there.
She is.
Yeah.
Shout out to Christine.
Yep.
And you know, you guys are also like putting together kits and different fun things together, like putting Wagyu, and you can get Wagyu and uni together, which Sean and I have prepared for some folks, and and then you add Trifecta Cooks Ryan's sushi rice to it.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah,
good stuff.
The vision there is just to be able to get a lot of the best ingredients. We're about to bring on the Caviar Co., which the founder there is Petra and her sister. Petra is also like one of the nicest human beings. But
awesome.
The goal is basically we want to be able to ship you the best ingredients, and then you could just prepare the sushi and then serve it to your family, where you don't have to spend absorbent amount at a sushi restaurant. Which the way I think about it is, you can buy the kits, we'll ship it to you, and then it'll be probably one of the best meals you've had. But if you want like the chef artist experience, then you can also go to the restaurants and chefs that we supply.
Yeah. And how many do you think you're supplying right now? It's quite a bit, right?
Marahita is they're a big player. So in major cities, there's typically like a couple of distributors that supply everyone, and then Marahita is the one that supplies them. So, yeah,
that's awesome. And then a lot of your impact with food is become this entity of PapaWagyu, and it's kind of growing into connecting everyone together.
Yeah,
like we've started to realize that together, because like everything we're doing is connecting over a meal sometimes, and sometimes we're meeting new people we've never, ever dreamed we would meet. And then there's other people who are like, oh, that's of course, I think your impact is awesome. And like, there's so much you're doing for the community. And then like, of course with the Asian Business Network as well, like you've got a lot of big players that in that aspect with the AAPI industry. And then tell us a little bit about what that's like to be building a new company and starting from scratch, and then kind of providing for your community, and then now it's like going all over the place.
Yeah, it's really beautiful to just take a step back and think about the people that connect, and they start becoming friends and they start helping each other. I do work kind of crazy hours. Sometimes it's 100 hours a week. And one thing you'll find when you talk to a lot of entrepreneurs is how lonely the journey is. It's kind of self-inflicted pain, right? Because you're the one that chose to be here, then you own everything, right? If you're successful, if you're not successful, and just starting something is like pretty crazy, right? But I think along that journey, you meet people, and then you're like, oh, wow, they're going through it too. So when you kind of like share that struggle, becomes easier in my opinion. And one of the things I like to do is like connect people, because I'm like, hey, if you're trying to solve this problem, I want to connect you with somebody that maybe be like a black belt or that has done it before, right? So it's like a very close-knit community, and I kind of vet anyone that I work with. And really like all I'm looking for there is just like, are you a kind and are you a genuine person? If you are, dude, let's be friends.
Yeah. I mean, you're just looking for no bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, excuse my French, but like you're just looking, you're just looking for a straight shooter and just someone that has good intentions and wants everyone to succeed.
Yeah. I look for people that like to help other people. So the interesting thing is like when I start to host more events or dinners and stuff, like you'll start to notice that everyone here is like, wow, they're actually like, they're talented, but they're also like really, really nice. And we have a shared vision to help people, right? And helping people comes in like many different ways.
Yeah.
And then I think that's a kind of the opposite of the culture here, where it's like, we always go into things like, oh, what can I get out of this? Right. But when I go into like interactions, like, okay, how can I help this person? And a lot of times, like, I just help. I don't want anything back from you. Right. And there's along the way, you find other givers, right? Like you're a giver. I think that's what I've always admired about you. It's really beautiful to see PapaWagyu evolve into more than just me and more than just a beef business, right? It's like really this really very powerful tool to get to connect people.
Awesome.
Yeah. Oh, and I'll leave one with this. Like, I got kind of an idea. I was listening to a podcast, and the person's like a very successful entrepreneur, and one of the questions that he asked was like, when you're no longer here on Earth, like, what do you want to continue, right? Because human life is pretty short, 80 to 100 years, right? And I think I want kind of like the idea is just to help people, right? And kind of just not get anything in return. I kind of want that to continue, and I'm actually starting to see that. And when I take a look, take a step back, and I see that, it just makes me really happy.
Awesome. And I ask a few things before we close it out. Any SF Bay Area world shout outs you want to give, friends, whatever.
Yeah.
Let them know. Let everybody know who's doing what.
I think the biggest one right now is Ryan at Trifecta. So Ryan has a spot in Sunnyvale. Right now he's doing to-go.
Trifecta Cooks.
Trifecta Cooks. We're going to do a lot of catering events. But Ryan's interesting because he used to work at Nobu in Morimoto. He also has a French background, but yeah, you can get some of the best sushi there, and he's a really, really nice guy. One of the best restaurants, in my opinion, in the Bay Area is going to be Ramen Nagi. I always talk about that.
Yeah. And we're right down the street from it too.
Yeah. So Ramen Nagi basically won like best ramen in Tokyo one of the years. And in my opinion, like it's perfect, right? Because I love a really rich tonkatsu broth. And I just went to Japan, and I went to one of their restaurants in Shinjuku. It's like this little super small restaurant that's open 24 hours. I think I went at like 4 a.m. It was like an incredible experience.
And how did that compare to the U.S. location, since you've been to both? Because often people want to know, is it the same? Is it really close? Did they get it right?
I actually like the U.S. locations a lot more because it's pork tonkatsu. In Japan, their location, there's a lot more fish flavor. But you just got to remember, like, they're just catering to the local palates. So the best, or like, food is so subjective. So I would just say just try a bunch of things and figure out what
it's good regardless.
Yeah.
Awesome. I kind of probably know the answer to this, but I'll let you tell everyone. Favorite tool, favorite gear that you like to use?
There's 3. So I love gear. So first one is my Yu Kurosake Mount Fuji knife. That's from Seisuke Knife. Amazing knife. It's a piece of art, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
2 is the most useful is the ThermoWorks ThermoPen, right? Because I get asked all the time, like, how do I cook? How do I make sure my food is not overcooked? And you just need a perfect temperature, and it's super portable, super reliable. It's what all the pitmasters use.
Yeah.
And then another one that I really liked lately is the Searsall head. I just got that one, and so I think it might be out in the market now. But it's great because you basically have a portable searing tool.
Yeah, kind of explain it. Explain that tool to everyone.
So if you get a torch and you torch food, that flame is too hot, right?
It's like a blowtorch, as you're saying.
Blowtorch. Any type of torch.
Yeah.
And then if it's too hot, you're going to get like a very burnt butane flavor. So the idea is basically you diffuse that heat. So the Searsall head is an attachment that you put on the torch, and then you just, diffuses it, and you just basically, when you're searing the protein for the Maillard reaction, which is what it makes all the food delicious, you're just painting in the sear. So it's like arts and craft when you're cooking.
And then couple more, but recipe or dish everyone should try.
That's a hard one. There's just so much good food out there.
There is, but any of them, all of them. You can name a couple. You don't have to just choose one.
I would say, like, if you like soups in general, go try Bun Bo Hue. There's like a lot of places in San Jose. And then like I would say one of my favorites is always tekka, right? So like, if you eat Asian food, just kind of like look for the braised pork with the egg. That's probably,
Yeah, and I think, I didn't mention it earlier, but like growing up in San Jose, you part of a huge Vietnamese community in San Jose as well. Like with all the different food, especially with banh mi sandwiches and like there's a huge community in San Jose. So that's awesome. And then, we'll get into, I'll probably ask you for specifics restaurants so we can put them in the show notes and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
But to close it out, I mean, floor is yours, man. You tell everybody anything you want, give advice. It's all yours, man. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm really glad we got to do this. I would say some last things that there's a lot of uncertainty in the economy right now, right? A lot of people losing their jobs and stuff, but I would say just be positive. Recessions are cyclical. But if you have the chance to help anyone, and help comes in all different forms, you should do it, because you'll never know if you're going to be on the other end of that, right? And I've been fortunate to just have a lot of people help me. And then I would say if you're thinking about starting something, well, first, I think I wouldn't recommend an entrepreneur lifestyle to a lot of people because you work crazy hours. But if you like have a passion and you want to do it, then I think you have the kind of the blueprint to be successful, right? Because when you're hitting all these different problems, if you are doing it for the right reasons because you love it, then you'll figure it out a way to overcome. But I would just say, yeah, man, like life is short. Just kind of do what you love. Follow Gary Vaynerchuk too, by the way. A lot of the stuff that I talk about is just repeating him. But one of the things he talks about too is like, just try a bunch of things, right? And how do you know what you love until you try it? And then that kind of ties into like, give yourself the freedom to fail, right? I feel like with Asians, we're really good at excelling, right? You're going to go to school, you're going to get all these good grades, right? But if you don't have a lot of stress, you don't fail, you're not good at picking yourself back up, then a lot of people just don't do that initial step. So if you choose to build that company or whatever it is, that's huge. And I think that's like one of the hardest steps. I was just talking to my friend Justin yesterday. Shout out to Justin. And one of the questions I asked him was like, after you sold your company, like, what does success look like to you now? And he just says like, just making the decision to actually start that company. So I see you doing that. You had some trials that you had to get over.
Setbacks,
huge. And then you're doing it too. So I'm glad that we got to sit down here. And I actually want to ask you a question. This is a question I actually asked a lot of people. Okay. And it's like, what does success look like to you?
Yeah, it is a good question. I think before, when you're younger, you think, oh, it's just money and I can buy whatever I want and the toys are fun. And now that I look at, being older and like gone through a few career changes now and probably my fourth career change, it's kind of like success to me is I think I enjoy making other people happy. So I think if other people are happy, I'm happy, my family's happy, and I can do all those things. And then, the other fun stuff is gravy, but like being able to do that and be able to provide for everyone. And then, if we can all help each other and we're in that constant circle of doing that throughout our life, that's success to me. And then coming up with something that you love so much, it doesn't matter how much you get paid.
Yeah.
I did a lot of my careers not for the money, you know. I was a police officer, not for the money, right? Like it's not the highest paying job in the world.
Yeah.
I could have gone and been a mortgage broker that made 3 times as much.
Yeah.
And had been offered that. And I was like, no, I'm doing this because I want to, I'm here to serve. I'm here to protect. I'm here to, that job was very, very difficult in many different ways, but also easy because I was there to do it and I wanted to do it. So like, I think it's now finding things you really want to do, and that's what we were doing. And then, the like you told me the other day, and few others have told me, you got to enjoy the journey, even though it's super hard right now. It's difficult right now. There's a lot of stuff going on, but get through that. But like enjoy that part, and then you have your wins, you have your losses. It's gonna happen. That's life.
Yeah. Well spoken, man.
I think we can end it on that.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Sean. And thanks to Hannah House for having us. It's a great spot. So thank you. Take care. And as a quick reminder, the restaurants and gear talked about on each episode can be found on my website, foodoriginspodcast.com. I appreciate your support. Thanks for listening.